Hello and welcome to Warehousing Level 1. Although it's a Level 1 course, this is also useful for the Level 2 underpinning knowledge. So, let's talk about warehousing, or more to the point, types of warehousing. Oh, I've worked in a warehouse before. Yeah. The thing about the course is that what I'm trying to do is ensure that no matter where you're dropped in the warehouse, whether it's goods in, dispatch, picking, replenishment, even the office, you have an understanding of what's happening. And so that's what I'm sort of aiming the course at, to be able for you to work anywhere. Moving on, types of warehouse. Well, surely a warehouse is a warehouse, right? Not so. First off, obviously the privately owned warehouse that we're all familiar with, the Tesco's, the Asda, B&Q. This is very common because it has some advantages. The main advantage to owning your own warehouse is that you can do what the hell you like in there. You can utilise the space as you wish, have the sort of shelving you want, you can have mezzanine floors, you can have hanging racks for clothes, etc., etc. So you can do what you like with the layout. And that's why pretty much everybody has, their own warehouse as much as possible. The downside is that you can't always get the exact warehouse that you want because it's chuffing expensive. Think about how much it costs to buy land, just the land itself. Now, for a viable sized warehouse, it's going to be more than a bit of an acre. You're going to have a reasonable sized warehouse with lots of racks and stuff, and that's going to cost you so much. Building the warehouse itself, add on to that. But then warehouses don't tend to be nice and conveniently on bus routes and, be open when buses are turning up at your site. Car parking for your staff. The other big pull on the land is the yard itself, where lorries perhaps need to drop off containers, do turnaround, etc., etc. So overall, there's a big cost involved in making your own warehouse, and that's what's prohibitive for a lot of people. Okay, so let's say that you're a manufacturer and your existing warehouse isn't up to your needs because you've suddenly got a rush on and you've run out of space, but you need the extra space for your stock that you're going to need to buy in, etc., etc. So what do you need? Well, something like the big yellow storage container type warehouse, big yellow warehouse. You've all seen Storage Wars, where you rent a space. This has quite a few advantages. It's short term. You don't need to build a warehouse. You just rent the space that you need per square foot, per month, or per whatever. It's insured through them. All of the staffing and everything is covered. The downside is the expense. It is very, very expensive. It's the most expensive way of doing this because you're paying somebody else's profit margin to do this. So on the one side, you've got all the benefits of having a warehouse, the logistics and everything else. On the downside, it's quite expensive. Now, Amazon do something like this with their warehousing, where you can sell your goods through Amazon and, for a fee, they will rent you a shelf in effect. And they'll do all the picking and logistics stuff for you when you sell it. Makes a lot of sense. So for the smaller business or for short term, then this sort of temporary warehouse is actually not a bad idea. You can't just set one of these up though, you need a license. But other than that, it has a lot of, quite a lot going for it as far as the small business person goes, or even the private individual. Let's say that you're moving house. You've just sold yours, completion's happening, but your new house isn't going to be ready for a couple of weeks. What the hell do you do with all the furniture because you've just sold yours and completion's happened, da-da-da-da-da. Simple. You rent a space for your furniture in one of these warehouses, done. Pick it up in a few weeks, there's no hassle. I think the biggest extra expense is you probably need to hire a van to get it there. Okay? So that's that type of warehouse. You also have refrigerated warehouses, cold stores, those sort of things. This is not just for frozen food. You can have chilled as opposed to cold. So imagine somewhere like fruit, flowers, those sort of things. They probably need to be kept cool, or cream cakes where you don't want them freezing. Fresh goods. So it needs to be perhaps just above freezing or just at freezing, so that your perishables don't perish that quickly, but you're not fully freezing the stuff. There's a downside to full refrigeration, to full freezing, and that's that your staff are going to be very cold very quickly if you're dealing at -25. So the first thing that you need to do that's going to add to your cost is buy them all the correct PPE. You're talking padded cagoles and that sort of thing. Think ski suits, thermal lined gloves, or perhaps thermal lined boots, all of those things. But it's -25, and if you put your staff at -25, even with the normal breaks, for a 12-hour shift, you'll kill them, or give them frostbite at the very least. So there's some stuff that you need to do, which is beyond the safety gear. You need to have them time in, time out of the warehouse. So let's say for half an hour in, you give them 15 minutes warm-up time and then send them back in again. What this means is that you need to work on, more than just the normal shift number of staff. You need, in effect, double the number of staff, so that while one shift team is in, the other team is warming up, and vice versa. Or you can rotate it to find the optimum, number of staff that you need. But staffing costs are horrendous. So you've got the freezer costs, the PPE costs, and the staffing costs. And that leads us on to our next type of warehouse: automated. Now, I'm sure you've all watched the sci-fi movies where machines take over the world, and for a lot of drones and stuff and computerized stuff, yes, you can automate a lot of it. Warehouses are easy enough to automate, and you would do so for a freezer warehouse. Because of those staffing costs, it suddenly becomes a lot cheaper to automate everything. But other companies, like Coca-Cola, for example, will automate because of the staffing costs and because of it never sleeps and you want a quick turnover and so on and so forth. But primarily, you need the demand to fuel that investment. Coca-Cola, like their big plant in Seville, is massive. It looks like a ball cube. It's fully automated. You've probably only got about 20 or 30 people on the entire shift for this massive warehouse. But Coca-Cola needs that level of logistics. Go anywhere in the UK, a garage, a pub, a newsagent, even, workspaces with machines and that sort of stuff, you will be able to get a Coke. Even if it's a Pepsi franchise, you'll probably find that you can get bottled Coke from behind the bar. So, and that's the same pretty much anywhere in the world. That takes a massive amount of logistics investment to make sure that you get what you want when you want it, where you want it. So Coca-Cola is a global dominant company that requires that level of investment. Freezer warehouses, a lot of the small companies won't need to automate, because of the investment. It's the larger European hubs where you're dealing with something for, one or two large organizations that automation becomes necessary. Amazon, again, is automating a lot of its concerns because of the amount of demand for Amazon products. So, yes, you're going to look at quite a large investment, but you've got to have the demand there to warrant it. Otherwise, as expensive as your staffing costs are, it's still cheaper than investing in a bought cube. Now, to give you an idea, fairground rides. A fairground ride, let's say with the little cars that go around the track and that sort of thing, and it collapses up, and you've got perhaps a dozen cars on an oval track, perhaps not that much, that's going to cost you about 2 million quid. Yeah, just the stuff that will fit on the back of a lorry will cost you 2 million quid. The paintwork, you're looking at 50 grand alone just for the artwork. Now, if you translate that sort of collapses up, puts on a lorry, does little fairground things, if you take that and translate that into industry, an elevator that goes up and down for a pallet, an automated elevator, will probably cost you about 1.5 mil. So if you imagine the investment that you're talking about for a decent automated warehouse, you're talking hundreds of millions of pounds. So your job's safe, for the meantime anyway, because most of UK employers are SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises. Okay. Who else? Well, the who else is, you've probably seen the next type of warehouse on TV, customs warehouses. HM Revenue and Customs have quite a bit of power in the UK, so word to the wise, if you want to naff out off anybody, make sure it's not HM Revenue and Customs, because they have scary archaic powers that date back to square riggers, sailing ships, people that talked like pirates of Penzance and smuggled barrels of rum in. Yeah, they actually have a royal warrant, so they don't need to go before a judge to say we think you've been naughty. They can do it anyway. Yeah, scary powers to seize, confiscate, you name it. So that's HM Revenue and Customs. So what does that have to do with logistics? Well, quite a bit actually, because if you're importing stuff, it might attract duty. You've all probably done or heard about people that have done the Calais run, rented a 7.5 tonner, the axles creaking under all the beer and alcohol. And then you get stopped by the customs people who take off your personal allowance and say, we're going to keep the rest until you pay the duty on it. And if we think this is a smuggling operation, we'll have the vehicle off of you as well. They have the power to do that, to stop and seize. So what happens is when you click buy on your computer and it comes in from China or whatever, if it's certain value goods, not just beer and spirits, then it will be held in a secure warehouse called a bonded warehouse. Once you've paid for the duty on the goods, then they'll send it on to you. Yeah, so it's a bit of a pig in a poke whether you get caught on that one or not. But usually certain goods, high value or luxury goods or that sort of thing, will attract duty coming into the country, especially if it's in direct competition to local goods. Yeah. So if, for example, you wanted to post salmon into Scotland, it would be illegal because that is something you're not allowed to do. That would damage their local industries. So there are all sorts of considerations and stuff. But bonded warehouses tend to be near ports and airports and those sort of things. And they deal with, as you would expect, import and export of goods, smuggling, and so on and so forth. So working in a bonded warehouse, quite interesting. The other types of warehouses as well are things that are related to production. So a factory might have its own warehouse so that it has easy access to the goods and materials it needs to manufacture its products. You might also, have ordinary food that's manufactured, so comes in as raw materials and gets turned into sandwiches, packed up and sent off to various shops in the regional garages. Another type of warehouse worth mentioning is the co-op, cooperative warehouse. Huh? What does the co-op have to do with warehousing? Well, quite a bit in their own right, but this is an attempt to address the problems of cost. Remember I was saying earlier that these things are chuffing expensive, yeah? The land, the business rates and the construction and various other things, not to mention all the equipment. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you could split the costs? So let's say you go into partnership with another one or two different businesses and say, right, we're going to build a warehouse. You get that bit, I get this bit, you get that bit, whatever. Or we'll all store our goods in the warehouse and we split the costs 3 ways or 2 ways or whatever. You've just done wonders for your build costs. Also, you run in costs and various other things. So you get the benefit of a reasonable sized warehouse with all of the security and the heating and the various other things. All the bills you would expect, but they're split. So it becomes manageable. Nifty, huh? So what do you need for a warehouse? What's your ideal thing for the warehouse? Well, an ideal warehouse has got good access to the road and logistics system. It's not going to do you any good having a warehouse out in the middle of the fens when it takes you half an hour to get to a road on a dirt track, because your lorries and stuff, yeah, the land might be cheap, but you want somewhere that accesses the motorways. And if you have a look at all of your warehouse and logistics, it hugs the motorway network, yeah, because it's very important to be able to get your goods out to where it needs. Cost of a warehouse as well. Imagine if you wanted to set up a warehouse in central London. Well, you know how much a flat costs in central London. So think of how much your warehouse is going to cost just there. So what you find is that warehouses don't sit in big cities anymore. They all go around the ring roads on the outskirts, or they're on the motorway network so you can get them to the cities and that sort of thing. Because the land in the Midlands or up north or wherever is going to be considerably cheaper than prime time real estate in the south. Access to road and rail networks and airports. You also probably want it to do what you want it to do. So it will have the right setup inside for hanging goods or refrigeration, etc., etc. Access to the right equipment like forklifts and those sort of things. And more to the point, access to the skilled staff. So you've got cheap land that's out in the middle of nowhere, but next to a junction on a motorway or within easy access, but no staff. So those sort of things. So anyway, other types of warehouse as well that we can talk about are long-term storage. This is usually associated perhaps with manufacturers, so you could look at wines and spirits that need to be aged. Aged for 50 years in oak vats when it needs to sit somewhere. Or seasoned timber. Timber gets, you can't just cut down a tree and then build something out of it because it warps and stretches as it dries out. It needs to be seasoned for a couple of years. It needs to be stored somewhere. Cheese is matured. Again, you don't just do the cheese and it's done. You might need to leave it for a while. So mature cheddar just sits on the block and does that. So you've got those sort of storage places as well. So there you go, plenty to think about on the different types of warehouses and, what to do. Until next time, I'm Alex. Have a good day.